pass across to Hogan. What a goal! That is quite superb. That's hurling for you.
Play continues inside Richie Hogan.
Hogan! That is it. Kilkenny lead.
Tasha a cup on great fire. God back to like I say, Richie Hogan is starting to be.
And it's in the back of the net. And it's that man, Richie Hogan, who's got it.
And that man has a book out. Whatever It Takes is in bookshops now. Richie Hogan, welcome.
Thanks very much, Joe.
7 times an All-Ireland winner with Kilkenny, Hurler of the Year in 2014, 4 All-Stars, 10 Leinster titles, 5 league medals to boot. And you've decided to tell your story. Writing a book is a serious undertaking, enjoyable?
Yeah. Enjoyable. Serious undertaking, yes. Enjoyable. Towards the end, it gets quite enjoyable. This part, I think, is enjoyable when it's done. It's tough going in the middle. Even just like when you're 35 or 36, as I was when I was writing it, you're not really programmed for self-reflection. But it was nice. Yeah, it was nice to do it. It was tough, like getting words on paper and putting them into a narrative and making sure that there's a story in it, that it's not a collection of, just a collection of events or stories, and that it's not boring. All of that was challenging, but really good. So delighted that I did it.
Maureen Gaffney, the psychologist, I don't know if you ever hear her talk, she's really impressive speaker. She often champions the value of writing your story to everybody, not just sports people who might sell a book on the back of it, but just there's something very good apparently about writing your story. Did you come away, this forced self-reflection, did you come away with any insights or revelations, or did you suddenly see patterns you had been unaware of previously?
Yeah, at times. Definitely the most glaring thing that I didn't expect was that how inaccurate your memory can be. And towards the end, when we were going through edits, there were some things that were really clear in my head, but then when we did a fact check on them, they were completely incorrect, or not completely incorrect, but details were just not right. And
it's an interesting moment when you see that in front of you.
Oh yeah. Or when a couple of stories where the story was accurate, but the timelines were inaccurate. And I was speaking to I was speaking to David Herity a little bit towards the end of the book, and I was telling him about a story that was in it. And he was almost insulted that I got some of the details wrong. And I had to, and then as he described to me, I was like, oh, geez, actually, yeah, I forgot about that. So I'm never, ever going to be harsh on anybody or hold anybody to 100% accuracy in terms of their memory. But I can see why it goes through such a strenuous editing and fact-checking process.
It's quite a profound revelation for all of us, because I'm sure it applies to all of us. So therefore, we all walk around with the stories of our lives in our heads, and actually we might be about 60% right if we're lucky.
Yeah, but like it's your perception, it's your viewpoint. And allied to that, the other thing that surprised me a little bit was what was important to me was irrelevant to other players on the team, or the things that stood out to me, for example, were completely irrelevant to others, and vice versa. And I thought that was kind of, yes, you are a really tight-knit group or a tight-knit team, but you all have your own viewpoint. You're individuals, and different things influence you, and your perceptions of different people on the team and how kind they were to you, or the moments that happened in games and how they might have been so important to you but not to others, or irrelevant to others. I thought that was, a little bit interesting, and then. When I had the book written, my first review, my wife was the first to review it, and her feedback was, Richie, I think maybe some people like to read where you're maybe wrong every now and again, and you kind of admit that. It was like, maybe a bit of humility mightn't go astray. It was too late then, however. But it was nice.
You are a confident person.
Thank you.
Where does that come from? I think it's an Irish thing to say, no, I'm not. But it's a good thing to be confident. Where does that come from, do you think?
Yeah. Confident. Ooh, like...
I'm not saying arrogant.
Yeah. I don't know. I just, to me, life is just incredibly simple for me, in the sense that all of the really important things in life, such as your health and the well-being of your family and your environment, all of those things, I've been so incredibly lucky that everything else is just been incredibly easy. So like playing hurling with Kilkenny, while there was loads of challenges, it was very simple in my mind. The harder I practiced, the more stuff I had control of, and the more things I could take responsibility for. I always just had... I got confidence from that. There was never a sense of, and it's not really confidence. It's just fearlessness is what I would have had it as, because it's just failing, which I've done many times, was not really. It was almost irrelevant. You know, it just it would never have deterred me earlier on, and I just found a formula that I thought just worked. Like just practice, love what you do, be very diligent, and so many people have done what I've done before me that I just found it just follow that kind of formula and it works.
It's funny you say
Breeds a bit
practice.
of confidence.
Yeah, I can imagine it comes from evidence. Practice is the first word I've written down here. Your back problems, which we can touch on later on, but they are especially cruel in that they curtailed something you love, which was the simple pleasure of striking a ball. And from childhood, where you're up first thing in the morning before school, right through winters and beyond, practicing poking a ball against a wall, to St. Kieran's, to your college digs, where the landlord has to say, can you please, this is a residential house, stop hitting a sliotar against the wall in the middle of the night, the neighbours can hear you, to even in the classroom at Belgrove Boys School in Clontarf, where when they're working on their homework or doing an assignment, you're hitting a ball against the wall with a hurl, teacher. The extent to which a hurl is in your hand, like it's just weaved throughout your life in an incredible way.
Yeah, and like that's just the way it was for me. And we say that's the way it is for every Kilkenny person. Every Kilkenny person is exposed to hurling, and then there's a handful who just are obsessed with it and love it. And I just got great pleasure from that. It was therapeutic almost, just banging the ball off of the wall and improving what you do and being really good at it. Was just, you know, in many ways, when I was a kid, it was a byproduct. And
hurl must have felt like an extension of you. Ball must have felt like an extension of you. The spin, the touch, all of it.
Like
so embedded in you.
Like you play golf, don't you?
Yeah.
Like there's nothing nicer than hitting the ball with a golf club on the money all of the time. Like it's so satisfying. It's the same with hurling a ball, and just banging it off the wall, hitting it over the bar, seeing a guy who's moving and knowing where he's going to be and just hitting it sweetly. Oh, it's just such a brilliant feeling, and it doesn't have to be in the middle of a game. You know, it's just even doing it for an hour, 2 hours, whatever. It's just, it feels it's just a brilliant thing to do. Unfortunately, it takes a lot of practice before it can be enjoyable.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like a 5 or 6 year old kid picks up a hurl and it's horrendous to him, you know, trying to learn how to rise it and swing properly and have the strength. But once you can get to a half decent level, I just found it brilliant. Yeah.
And are you robbed of that now? Is that a difficult thing for you to go and poke around for an hour?
Yeah. Like I can do it, but I just couldn't. I can do it, but I'll suffer for about 2 days after it. Okay. So in terms of the short timelines between training sessions, whether that be with Kilkenny or with my club, or if I had a game on a Sunday, like I can't really pick up the hurl. The odd time I'll do a Friday night session, very, very basic. But I probably wouldn't pick up a hurley from Wednesday or Thursday if I was playing on Sunday. Whereas when I started, I would be down on Saturday and I'd give a good hour of just getting the touch in and trying to keep trying to feel sharp and feel confident and try to improve. But to be honest, the older I got and the more I let go of that and couldn't do it, I actually realised that I actually had enough done, and my confidence wasn't based on having to hit the last 10 balls over the bar, which was a complete change from when I was a kid. Like, I remember watching a Johnny Wilkinson documentary about how he wouldn't leave until he'd kicked like 50 balls in a row over the bar, and his girlfriend was waiting in the cinema for him and stuff like this, and I loved all that and bought into it, and I would have been the same. But actually, when I got a little bit older, I realised that there are absolutely no limits here. Of course, you can hit the ball over the bar. You've done it 1,000 times. Of course, you can touch the ball into your hand. Just because you haven't done it since last week doesn't mean you've lost it. So yeah, I definitely would have had a change towards the end.
We shouldn't brush past the fact you were a handball world champion at underage level. So your grandmother, I think, in a bid to burn off some energy on your part and Paddy's part, got you very involved in handball. You say something very interesting about, I guess, again, between hurl always in your hand. You say essentially handball is, if you want to look at through the prism of what it might mean for your hurling, a reaction drill. Do that 4 days a week for 90 minutes for 10 years. Come back to me. It makes an impact.
Yeah, of course it does. How could it not? And
so specifically, it got your sharpness, is it? Your hand-to-eye coordination. All of these things were being honed.
Yeah, the ball is, like in any racket sport, the ball is traveling incredibly fast. Plus, your ability to move your feet quicker. You're not planting your feet really heavy, and your ability to control your own movements and react, and then also your ability to judge angles, because this is a court, so most of the time the ball will come into the same areas all of the time, because it'll hit a side wall and off a back wall, and you're waiting for it when it comes. Very different to tennis, for example, in that way. It's more like that. I'm sure you've seen paddle, where...
I need to stop you now. I'm obsessed with paddle. I'm playing paddle in about 4 hours' time.
So I watch paddle, and when a guy hits the ball, I can see exactly where it's going. And
Yes.
when a guy is lining up to hit the ball, and the opponent runs out of the court, and he knows it's going out there, and you think, how did he see that? You can see the shape of people as they're lining up to strike it. And also you know how to judge the angles of where the ball is coming.
Yes.
How does that translate into hurling? Very, very simply, the ball breaks most of the time. A little bit different now, where it's a little bit more controlled, but certainly during my peak years playing out around the middle of the field, the ball broke most of the time. And it's not that you're judging it better, it's that you're reacting a hell of a lot quicker. And being smaller than other players, I could get my legs turning over much quicker as well, which obviously helped. And then your ability to see what's going on around you without losing track of the ball that's in your hand. That was another piece, because in handball, you're watching your opponent and how he's shaping up to hit the ball, while also watching where this is actually going to go. So you're moving one way while keeping an eye on where you think that ball is going to land. So I found it very, very beneficial. And it was such a brilliant game. And that was the peak really of my abilities at 15. I was really good, but I just couldn't keep it going after that.
You're world champion good. Have you played paddle?
Never.
You'd adore it. You don't need to twist and turn as much as well. Your back mightn't have to go through as much.
Yeah.
You're meant to sort of stand in an open stance and flick the wrist a bit more, table tennis.
We'll see. Is it an Olympic sport?
Oh, it will be soon if it's not.
Okay.
You're made for it.
I doubt it.
To wrap up this point, I'm just trying to get across to the listener, and it comes through in the book in more detail. There, 10,000 hours are being accumulated in lots of different ways. And here's I want to read a piece from Kieran's. Obviously, Kieran's famous school, hurling school. So naturally enough, everybody brings a hurl to school. And this just gives a sense again of how different elements of your game are being pieced together as you're developing. So you talk about these free-for-all matches at lunchtime, where basically, it's as many kids as the pitch can handle, one or two slitters, and in true Kilkenny fashion, ball has been belted from one end to the other, and it's who can come away with it. So you remember being dumbstruck one day, is the word you used, when James Dowling, future captain of the Kilkenny under-21 All-Ireland winning side in 08, he's a small fella, you say. You say, one day I saw him lurking at the back of this mosh pit of about 50 lads. The ball fell and he made this leap in from behind on top of everyone, swinging with his left hand to clear the hurls out of his way and catching with his right as everyone else missed it. My jaw was on the floor. How had he done that? Watching James was a light bulb moment. I started to copy him. Hang out the back of crowds, time your run in from behind, stay clear until the ball is there, then grab it and you're away. It's a technique I've used ever since. Kind of a mad way for a future hurler of the year to, have that kind of a moment, isn't it?
Yeah, James is a brilliant player. I met him last night at our launch, and just incredible guy in the air, very similar to Tommy Walsh.
Will this come as a surprise to him when he reads the book?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I haven't said this to him, but he was well known for his ability. I remember he played at he's smaller than I am, and he was playing centre back for his club. And he played a little bit midfield for us, and Kilkenny under-21 captain, such a brilliant, outstanding player. But so incredibly good in the air. And I just found it amazing because my game at that time, I would have been 14 maybe. And in Kilkenny, it's such a small county that if you're playing on an under-14 team, there's only maybe one or two clubs of which that under-14 team, every kid is 13 or 14 years old of age. They would be the city clubs, whereas we were playing a lot of country teams where the guy playing corner forwards could have been 10, and there's a mix of abilities, so you don't actually really need to work on a lot of technique that much because the puckers used to come down and just catch it and hit it, and you didn't need to do too much. But he was a lot smaller than me then. Neither of us have grown much since. But I wasn't a small kid, so I never really had to do that. But I found it amazing that you could just leap across guys, and it was actually more so about how it looked than actually catching it, because there's many ways to catch it. But like to me, it was incredible. It takes huge bravery, right. Especially in there with no helmets and. So yeah, and there was many moments like that I would often pick up more from my peers than I would pick up from people who you would stereotypically think you would pick up more from, like leaders in the dressing room and stuff. I'd often pick up more from people in the club or people in my school and different things that I could bring to a game for sure.
Mm. You're, to skip ahead a little bit, you're a big underage prospect, 3 years at minor. You get into the Kilkenny squad in 07. You say no welcome mat laid out. You arrived and you got to work. Everyone was too busy trying to make the squad or the team. It was sink or swim. With a few exceptions, Eddie Brennan, you mentioned, was very generous with his advice. So you are in this period, like a lot of future big players for Kilkenny, take a while to establish yourself. In 08, there's a performance against Offaly. It doesn't go well, and in a Brian Cody kind of way, that's you done for that season. Mm-hmm. In 09, league final is transformative. You do really well under pressure. You say of Brian Cody, he would just take note of these things and they'd stick in his head for months, and you delivered under pressure that day. And so these kind of things, these are the building blocks, really. And 9, I mean, you play All-Ireland final, although your ankle's busted, and that damages 10 a little bit, but you're up and running. But 2011 is liftoff. I think it's fair to say. I suspect people have mentioned the Jackie Tyrrell story to you at Seafield quite a bit. Do you want to tell us about the assault that you committed on him?
Or that he committed on me?
I mean,
no, it was a fair fight, really. But that was common. Like Jackie was absolutely vicious in training, but an incredibly disciplined player on the pitch in matches. Incredibly disciplined. But training sessions were... Everything added into it because a lot of players were on the same level and needed to impress, and there was a lot of games in training. It was very much match-based, and you had your own corner, you had your own patch. That was how we played it.
Yes.
And it became a physical battle, and we knew that the management appreciated players who were more physical than others. So in your head, if you wanted to play, you had to tackle like mad, you had to push guys around, you had to prove yourself physically, not just go out and score a goal and 4 or 5 points.
Yes.
Because that wasn't really...
It's true. I mean, you do say, when I say things stick in Cody's head, rather than a great point from 70 metres, what's more likely to stick in his head is you chasing back 50 metres and shoving a fella out over the sideline. That gets his juices going.
Yeah. And that's what's it wasn't a communication. It wasn't a very... The communication wasn't a big thing in the environment.
No.
But when you did get messages, it was always about that.
Okay.
It was never, great score from the sideline, or, you're doing brilliant with the ball in your hand, and you're getting on so many possessions. It was always, they'd notice if you chased a guy 50 yards, and even if you didn't get there, by the way, if instead of a guy being able to steady himself and pick someone out, if you even just rushed him a little bit, and
that was noted.
Noted.
They could see that. Yeah,
and we picked that up and we bought into it. With Jackie, that was so. Paul Murphy had come in that time as the right cornerback, and Jackie was left cornerback, and I was playing in the inside forward line around that period, and I was never put on Paul, probably because we were good friends and same club, but I was always put on Jackie at number 13, marking number 4. Yet in matches, I was number 15. So that was a very deliberate thing to put me in there. And yeah, the big thing is you can't play well every night in training. And but the big thing for defenders was, okay, if you're not really on song here, you make sure your man doesn't do anything and do whatever you can. And the whistle never blew. And that for me was a big, down in Seafield, I first ball came in and I won possession, and I think I got a score out of it. And then the next one came in, and just blatantly, and sometimes you can get struck with a hurl if you're caught on the wrong side, where, like I mentioned about catching the ball, a player can be making room for themselves, and the handle of the hurl can hit you in the head. Those things happen. But this was the other side, the wrong side. You're not supposed to be hit by anything here. And I got hit on the cheekbone. And I just, usually I would never have opened my mouth. I would never have swung back. I would never have said anything. I would always was very disciplined in that sense. But this time I was like, no, fuck this. Because I felt if I didn't do something, I was just going to fade into the background, and all of a sudden someone gets into my position. I was like, no, do you know what? If I'm going out here, I'm going out with a serious bang. So we just flaked each other for the whole thing, and completely wrong, but that would have stood out. And the two of us hopped into the ice baths.
Can I intervene a moment? Because I think you've just delicately dwelt on what he did and not really what you did, which is very adept of you. But he's exposed, hand in the air, catching the next ball coming down, and you pull back hurl, don't even look at the ball, you just slash and hit at his chest. But then, and I thought, geez, fair. Whew. But then the next line is, I then took back the hurl again and I slashed at his chest again.
No, he was coming for me at that stage.
Right,
so
okay.
It was
self-defense second time. But sorry, afterwards you sit down beside him.
And first we went into we had ice baths, which for us are these mortar tubs that you see on construction sites, and just filled with water, and you fit 2 people in it. So he was in one, and I could see the marks on his chest, and I was just as bad. The two of us were streaming in blood, and there was probably more of my blood on him, and vice versa. And I just jumped in beside him because I was like, this is the spot. I'm not going to start making things awkward here. Just as a sign that, look, I'm not going away here. And sat beside him then in the dressing room and stayed there for as long as he lasted, which was another 5 or 6 or 7 years.
It's a strange start to a love story.
Certainly not. It's certainly not a love story, that's for sure. But and I think that was important for me, and I didn't realize it as much. But since I've retired and we've had a few events, I've heard other people saying especially even listening to Tommy Walsh, who was at my launch last night. He just spoke about how they targeted me when I came in because I had a reputation coming in as being good underage, and none of them wanted to be the one to kind of be taken to town and train. And so he specifically remembers himself and Noel Hickey and Jackie Tyrrell specifically targeting me coming in, which I wasn't aware of at the time. And I kind of had a funny feeling. I was like, this is a little bit
really is tough.
Out of hand. But for me, it was that was really important. And it sounds weird, but that was really important for me. And everything just settled after that, because there was a sense of, okay, if I try stuff with this guy, he's going to come back 10 times worse. So maybe just play the ball the next time. So it was great.
Yeah. Really interesting development in your psychology in 2013. So at this stage, you're flying and you're super confident and you're playing Cork and you're marking Shane O'Neill. Shane O'Neill's fast, physical, dynamic player, but you're feeling pretty good about the situation because you're in good form. And right before throw-in, Cody says to you, listen now, don't take him on. You don't really have the pace to take him on, so just box clever, that kind of thing. And this floors you. It's not what you need to hear, really affects your performance. You're very unsure what to do when you get possession. It's a nightmarish kind of performance. You talk about being disgusted with myself, and you didn't, Brother Damien would be a mentor, other people. You didn't go to anyone, you kind of sat with it for a while. You said you came to a revelation, Brian's words could not have that effect on me, good or bad, and I made a decision never to give him or anyone that control over me again. I filtered out everything that anyone ever said to me from that point on.
Yeah.
Good decision?
Yeah, I think so. There's just so much freedom in it. I came up, Kilkenny is it's filled with so many icons of the sport and heroes, and you come in and you elevate their words above everything else, and it's not about the content of what people say, it's about the person who's saying it and their opinion of you. And for me, you mentioned at the start, I'm a very confident person. I have a lot of self-belief, more so than confidence can go up and down in sport. You see a player who's really confident, but I would have always had some really strong self-belief, but confidence would have always gone up and down. But for this, it was, I've never had it before, or since either, certainly not to that extent, but I'm sure people have felt this before, but the energy sapped from me straight away, and I just got this outrageous bout of anxiety, and I didn't know what to do. All of a sudden, I was so worried about the game, and I was like, what am I going to do here? And when I sat and reflected on it, it sounded so pathetic when you talk back to yourself, because it's such a minor foolish thing to be worried about. And I knew that the issue was with me. I knew that, how could all of the right variables, if you like, come together, and then someone is like, oh, do you know what? I doubt that you'll get past this guy, and then you just fall apart. Not take the advice that's been given, but you fall apart. But for me, it was just deciding, and it wasn't filtering out Brian's word, because I know that can sound a little bit misleading in the sense that, I didn't listen to what was said. It wasn't that. It was more a case of everything I did to get up to match day contributed to the person I was going to be on match day. And if Joe Malloy said something to me, or if Brian Cody says something to me, or Eddie Kerr, or my parents, it was all treated the same. What is the content and what they're saying? Is there advice in here? Yes. Is there something that will benefit you? Yes. Am I useless as a result of this conversation? No. Yeah. Am I brilliant as a result of this conversation? No. Yeah. I'm exactly what I've put into myself before getting there. And I just found an incredible release after that, because all of a sudden I didn't give a shit what anybody said. And you just heard with so much freedom.
I mean, I'm sure it's part of maybe the reason why the next chapter is called Why is Hurling So Easy? And it's 2014 Hurler of the Year, 10 years ago, probably to the day, give or take. And 15, another All-Ireland, and a very sweet one. There'd been a raft of retirements. So like in that period, before the body has deserted you, the game was easy and heaven, I would think, to be out there. I mean, and you talk in that period as well, like there's such dedication. Everything about you just screams like your preparation's aligned, you're probably sleeping perfectly, you're eating perfectly, you're not, it just seems like it just must have been like a joy. I can't imagine what it is to find the game that easy at that level. Yeah,
and even what you mentioned there about you're sleeping perfectly, you're eating perfectly, it was a sense of, it didn't actually matter what I did, hurling was just so easy at that point. And I remember going out before the league final. This is not in the book, but I remember going out in the league final. I think the league final was on a Sunday, but I remember going out 2 days beforehand and doing a 5K run. I don't know why I did it. And then I actually felt really tired after it. I was thinking to myself, what the fuck did I do that for? Whereas a few years before, that would have maybe played on my mind a little bit physically. But at that point, it actually didn't matter to me what I was doing. I placed no limits on what I could do on the pitch when I got there. And as a result, everything was so easy. Now, there was a sense of, the other key part for me around then was I was a forward before then, and probably through underage and the responsibility that comes with being a good forward, there was a huge amount of pressure on you to score. And, if things weren't happening after 30 or 40 minutes, or if the ball's not coming in, you're not going well, you had to come off the pitch with a certain amount of scores or a certain amount of contributions. Whereas out there, I wasn't, scoring was a bonus. Yeah. And everything was so easy. I was like, right, I don't have to get the ball between the posts. Now I just have to get it down the pitch and get it into somebody's hand. And you were on the ball every single minute. So if you make a mistake, the next ball's coming in 20 seconds.
14, you say, interestingly, the only full year you had at midfield.
Yeah.
And you loved it. And you liked how you could shape the game, and your creativity and your passing all came to the fore. So I sense that was a big regret. You would have loved a few more years at midfield. Yeah.
It was definitely an area of the pitch where I was able to hurl with just complete freedom. And that was just so enjoyable because, as I mentioned, it just felt so easy. Not that it's easy playing there, but at the time it just suited me so much. And I moved to centre forward then for the next couple of seasons, and I kind of rotated in and out of midfield and centre forward even that year. But I moved into the half forward line then for the next couple of seasons, and then back into the full forward line. But it was just a symptom of the team. We had Michael Fenley and Connor Fogarty, who were two top class midfielders. Yeah. And we were a little bit short in the forwards when Henry and Aidan Fogarty and Richie Power and a few others moved. So it made sense, but certainly a place that I absolutely loved playing.
Yeah. The relationship with Cody is obviously throughout the book. So even jump back to 2009 for a second. That's very interesting. You were getting picked up with a few others at the Louis Fitzgerald Hotel ahead of a game against Antrim in the league. So 2009, this is your second year in the setup, and you're about to have a good year. And you score 110 that day. So nothing is said that day, but it was interesting that your body language, i.e. the leisurely pace at which you walk to the bus, everybody waiting for you, that gets thrown back at you months later.
Yeah.
So this is a dressing room where you are being watched at all times, and things are being noted at all times, and they're said to you at all times. Even there's a stage in the book where you're talking about media relationships generally in the team, or commercial opportunities, and Chad Fitzpatrick's in Dublin and doing a few gigs. Mm-hmm. And at one stage, Brian, talk about doing someone in just one line. It says, "I hear you're carrying the scissors around Dublin to Chad."
Yeah.
So that's let's quieten that down.
Yeah.
Could you tell us, and this is interesting in and of itself, it's also interesting in that you don't have a great problem with it. the halftime against Limerick. This is the 2012 season where you've lost to Galway in the Leinster final. Things haven't gone well in the first half against Limerick in the qualifiers. You're standing up to try and get the lads going, and Cody enters the room.
Mm-hmm. Do you want me to tell it?
I think you should.
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, very simply, we had just, and context I think is really important to a lot of this. So nobody would ever stand up in the dressing room to speak during that period unless they had been playing really well in that game or had been maybe having a really good year. So that it was always a case of your performance comes first, right. Then you can start telling other people what to do, or then you can speak from, and it was more about credibility than anything.
As an aside, that's tough position for a captain to find himself if he's not in great form, but that's just an aside.
Yes, but captaincy in Kilkenny is not the same as captaincy everywhere else.
County
in
final
the sense
winners.
That, yeah. So it was never judged.
Yeah, okay.
A captain for us is the guy who collects the cup.
Okay.
Leaders are in the dressing room. And look, we had gotten hammered against Galway, and I had played pretty well against Galway, and I had played really well the week before against Dublin in an All Ireland, in a Leinster semi-final. So I had been going well. I'd been top of my game, and first half against Limerick, I was going okay. I was doing pretty well, and I was looking around. I was like, we were a beaten team, genuinely, because everyone, like, generally, our dressing room at halftime would be lively and lads are keeping lads going and somebody stands up to say something. And I was looking around, the heads were down because after losing to Galway, after getting hammered by Galway in the Leinster final, everybody expected a reaction. And we expected a reaction, and all of a sudden we were going out and we weren't playing well. And so I stood up to say something, and as I was standing up, Brian burst through the door, and I was in the place in the dressing room which looked out onto the door, and he just saw me and just said, "Shut the fuck up and sit the fuck down," and then started saying, "When are you going to start living up to all of the potential that you have?" And then he walked in towards the shout, and I was completely shocked. I didn't really know what to do, but I was standing, and I was like, does he actually want me to sit down or not? So I decided not to. And then he turned around, I was still standing. I said, sit the fuck down. And we laugh so much. We laugh so much about this. So the older crew of guys, a lot of whom would have left in 14 and 15, I think it's their favourite story.
We being the players, not you and Brian.
Excuse me?
When you say we laugh about it, that you and Brian don't laugh about it, you and the players laugh about it.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't think you and Brian laugh about it so much.
No. Yeah.
But you say you go for dinner afterwards. That is a good telling off. And by the way, the team responds to old school treatment.
Yeah.
But you sort of say after dinner, Brian could sense your annoyance, and you got sent off in the second half.
I did.
Maybe your mind was elsewhere.
Couldn't have gone worse. Yeah.
But you sort of make the point, listen, I'm not taking that personally. Bit of collateral damage in my case, but that's fine. That wasn't a kind of...
No, sure, he didn't mean it.
Yeah, okay. That's how you saw it.
No, he didn't. Like, sure, if it was somebody else, they would have gotten the same thing. If I had been sitting down, I would have been...
the sit down part, yes. The when are you going to start living up to your potential felt a little bit more personal.
Oh, yeah, but like he was just so angry, he could have said anything.
Okay.
We don't. We would rarely have taken anything like that too personally,
okay.
For sure. Yeah.
There's a kind of it's fascinating actually to get a glimpse behind the curtain. There's a theme really throughout your period with the team whereby the lack of tactical innovation there is a source of frustration for you. And you talk about in 2011 even sort of at a team meeting saying, can we stop just raining balls down on top of ourselves all of the time? Mm-hmm. And it's kind of funny, you note that you're sitting beside Tommy Welch as you're saying this, and you feel like slowly but surely he's realising, hang on, are you talking about me?
Yeah.
But where it becomes more acute, I think, is when Clare win in 2013 so memorably and Waterford are starting to do their thing and the game is changing. on the face of it, Kilkenny have won 6 of the last 8 All-Irelands. But your feeling is like we're winning games, like they're tight games, or there are lesser teams than us who are better organised, who are causing us problems, and they shouldn't be really causing us problems. And you sort of say, like Cody would be like delighted, like what's wrong with you? We're another All-Ireland final. Will you come on? This is just the way we do it in Kilkenny. There's that creative tension really starts to grow kind of 13, 14, 15, 16 territory.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
Did everyone feel it in the dressing room? I get back to that perspective point. Like, was this the talk of the group, or did you feel this more than others?
No, like out of the 35 or 40 people that are there, a lot of people will just come in. They'll train really hard, and anything that happens around that, it doesn't really concern them. They buy in hook, line and sinker straight away, and they'll go through a brick wall, and they're brilliant people. Of course they are, and brilliant teammates, and that's their style. Whereas I would go home and I would think, God, you know what? Just even from being on the pitch, we're getting really exposed here, and like if Owen Murphy brings off 3 point blank saves, I'm not thinking, Jesus, isn't Owen great? I'm thinking, he should be bringing off no saves. So that's the way I would have thought about it. Myself and Brian, from that perspective, would have been complete opposites, in the sense that I definitely would have overthought it. And even looking back, there's some things that I would have thought very strongly about then, and as they materialised, I was like, oh no, that was wrong. So I would overthink it, and he would probably underthink it. There was so much emphasis placed on working hard and bringing passion and spirit to the game, and having that never say die attitude. And they are all of the things that we were brilliant at, and brought to every single game. So my thinking was, well, if we can bring the same application to these elements of the game, that'll boost it. Whereas they were maybe seen as smaller things at the start. Definitely towards the end of my career, the last couple of years of Brian's reign and in Derek Ling's reign, it has absolutely changed.
Got there.
You can't just, as a cornerback, get the ball and fire it down the field. But it took us way longer than everybody else.
Maybe the nadir, or the kind of most tense point, is after the 2016 All-Ireland final, where Tipperary have beaten Kilkenny. And in effect, I mean, I was at the game, and I'm no tactician, but it even jumped out to me, God, there's a 2-on-2 in that entire half of the field, and there's no protection, and Callan's having a good day. And it's not until the start of the next season that Brian Cody is having a meeting with you at Nolan Park, and he kind of brings up the final and says, why do you think we lost the final, Richie? So take it from there.
Yeah, he kind of knew. I suppose he knew I was coming with something. He, as I mentioned, we're completely different in how we would have looked at it. So big moments is what he would have looked at. And I'm not sure whether it was the first, I think it was the first puck out, but it was certainly the first puck out down on top of me at centre forward, and I was marking Ronan Marr, who was a young player and probably looking for a bit of confidence, if you like. And he caught the very first puck out, and he went on to have a really good game. That was directed as that set the tone for the game.
Yes.
And that was a huge reason why we lost. And
that's Cody's point to you in the meeting.
Yeah. And sure, like that just...
You took that really well, I'd say.
I was like, you do those things, you absolutely do take personally. And I've there's an element of truth in it as well, by the way. Like, let's be fair. But it took the legs from under me, because I was going in with a plan, or going in with something in my head and thinking, this is how the conversation will go. And then, it's like that Mike Tyson line of everything is going well till you get a punch in the face. And
he gave you a pretty good one, I think.
And that's how he saw the game. Right now, there was an element of me who saw it like that too. Like, I love big moments in games, and they're very crucial.
Yes.
But I felt we were ignoring a huge reason as to why we were not getting the performances that the quality of our players would suggest we should have gotten. And that wasn't the only meeting, by the way. I would have had loads of, let's say, 5 or 10 minute words on the pitch where, you know, can we do this, can we do that, or, you know, winter season sort of stuff. But this was a sit down. It was maybe the most dramatic.
So you eventually gather yourself and make your points back about the tactics and a bit more innovation required. And then you sort of say yourself in the book a degree of wanting to have the last word and strong character. You said to him, look, we're on the same page here. If I win, you win. If you win, I win. The difference is I'll do anything to win and you just want to win your way. And then you said, we didn't have a meeting again for a few years.
Yeah. But that's genuinely how I felt. It was quite frustrating.
It's a big criticism of a manager. And it's good, right to make it to his face, but it is like, you would be, if that's how you felt, very frustrating, given that this is your whole life and this is the most important thing in many respects in your life, when you feel we're doing all this and we're not maximizing our potential and this, you know, there's a lot of low hanging fruit here. Can we just come on?
Yeah. And like, for me, whether it's true or whether it wasn't true is irrelevant, because it was true in my head at that time. And look, this is one thing which I was never able to do. If something was really, really important to me and if I felt it needed to be said, I just had to say it. I wouldn't be able to sleep if I didn't.
And when you say it afterwards, are you full of self-recrimination and I shouldn't have said it then? Do you get the worst of both worlds? Or did you feel good you said it? Do you think, yeah, no, sod it.
Oh, no.
Let him have it.
Yeah, and it wasn't about letting him have it. It was just about getting it off my chest. Okay. It was more about that. Okay. I didn't care what anyone else really thought. But, and I thought it would help, you know. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't have said it. But for me, I couldn't, like, I genuinely, I could never go into a game and spot something at halftime or spot something at the start of the game and be like, no, we'll get on with it. And wake up the following day and be like, oh, I wish I said that.
Is your relationship with him quite strained and damaged and not especially warm thereafter?
No, to be fair. Like Brian wouldn't have a close, or not that I know of anyway, I wouldn't have had a very close relationship with any of the players. It was always very hands off. We come to the pitch, we do a work, off we go. And it's very different to a professional environment where you might be going to work from 9 to 5 or 9 to 3 and managers tipping around, and it's part of his job to go and engage with people. And we go in for 2 hours, very heavily intense, and we leave. And we have some intermittent meetings throughout the season, but I think myself and Brian, our relationship would have been the same, I'd say, throughout. It was a little bit stronger, I think, towards the middle of my career, where he would have came to me and asked me some questions about what's happening on the pitch, or I would have brought some stuff to him and he would have been like, full trust, just do it. And that was good, but that's not really a relationship. It's all kind of, it was what it needed to be. And like, that's not really why we were there. We were there to be effective. But no, like all my conversations with Brian at the start of my career, the end of my career, the middle of my career, they're all the same. It's very sound and pleasant guy to talk to normally, but people just have to, outside of the dressing room, obviously Brian is a gigantic character in the game, like, so you have to take that into account too, and you have to just get beyond that you're not talking to Brian Cody, the persona or the character, if you like. You're talking to your manager. You're both on the same team, you both have the same objective. So, like, it doesn't matter if he's been there for a year or for 25 years. The important message is what's important.
I suppose what then sort of happens, what maybe supersedes your worries about that stuff, is your body decides to say, time's up, in a big way. We've talked about this before, so we don't need to overly go in it. But oh my goodness, like even the experience of reading through those chapters is like a little bit tiring. I mean, to try and live with it day in, day out is just like chronic pain is no joke. The chronic aspect of it, that treadmill quality to your back pain. So difficult mentally. Like, in effect, you know, whatever's going on with your back is going on. And so when your back doesn't feel good, when your spine is not in the mood, it says, okay, handbrake up, and you go into spasm. And this is so, irregular, but also, debilitating. It gets to a point where you sort of realize, oh, there's an early warning sign. I'm about to go. It's like your spine is on a cliff edge and you're trying to gently coax it back. And so that seems to involve lying down, movement, gentle. Like it's like you're diffusing a bomb to try and pull it back from the brink of however many days where you're completely screwed. And this happens all sorts of times. This happens in a car park. This happens first half when you're a sub in a All-Ireland semi-final, which you spend on the tiles of Croke Park in 2023. Just mad that you kept going with it. Like, it was really bonkers.
Yeah, it was frustrating. And it was, as you mentioned, it was the irregularity of it and the regularity of it at the same time, right? And it just the random regularity of it, if you like.
You talk about waking up every morning being how's my back today, first 10 seconds.
Yeah. So depending on how I sleep. Now, I would sleep relatively well. If I didn't sleep well, I often slept on the ground, especially when it was cold. And getting up out of bed was hard, in the sense that the slightest wrong movement and I was gone for not just the day but the week. And as I got older, it started if I get a back spasm, rather than recovering in a week, it became 2.5 weeks, or it became 3 weeks. So it's it was it was just the mental toll of it made it so difficult. But the fact that there was no quick fix, or not a quick fix, even a long fix.
Yeah, you tried to take months and months out to fix it.
Yeah, I never really minded injuries too much, because I've had some really serious acute injuries. But it's even a cruciate, like the plan is there.
Yeah.
You're gone for a year, fine, but you can get back. It can be done. You can be fine. And there's a start and a finish. But for me, it always felt. It was more about just not being able to get to the end of it.
Steady decline almost.
Yes, yeah. And from coming from such a high and then being at such a low, and the just trying to get back. Like, who cares about winning? Like, that wasn't even important. It was just to get back and prove that you can do it. But it was difficult. Now, I must say, now, like, I'm not expected to perform at the same level. I'm not expected to put my body through the same wear and tear. So the mornings are not bad. Day to day is pretty okay. But for sure, with trying to do extraordinary things, which is play at elite sport level, look, I probably should have given up way before I did, but I always, and like, I would have said this even to the likes of Derek, like, I never felt that getting 10 minutes or 5 minutes or trying for a year to just get back and get 5 or 10 minutes, I never felt that was beneath me.
I was amazed at that. That jumped out. Because is it 22, isn't that Brian's last year? But you were flying, like, I mean, not for the first time, injections and patched up, and you're flying, and it's all just to get 10 minutes at the end of all those months and months. And I think that was amazing. That didn't feel beneath you. Yeah,
because in some people's head, and this has been said to me a lot, it's about, oh, you did this all to get 10 or 15 minutes at the end, and why are you doing it all? But it's it's 10 or 15 minutes that very few people get the chance to get. And if you can contribute in those 10 or 15 minutes, just being on the pitch was incredible.
Incredible. I never got a sense, and your wife, maybe girlfriend at the time, I'm not sure. So, I mean, like, you can't get the bus, obviously, the team bus. I mean, she used to drive you here, there and everywhere so you can rest up your back. I didn't get a sense, was she sort of saying to you, 19 into 20, 21, 22, here, Mr. Grumpy, like, just let's wrap this up.
No, she wasn't. And I never. Yeah, we did. I don't know. She realizes now how important the game is to me. She would have often said, let's say, what's like, she would have often said, if I come home and I'm like, oh, I'm after pulling my hamstring, or if I hurt my back or something like that, she would have often said, oh, sure, Jesus, what's the point if you're just going to keep getting injured? But we would never really have spoken about it. And even when I retired, I think I only told her that morning. I was like, I didn't ask her. So it's like I kept hurling so separate to the rest of my life. So I never would have even said that to Anne. I think whatever day I retired, I would have thought about it the night before. I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this in the morning. And I would have written out something and I would have just showed it to her, said, I'm going to send that out in the morning, rather than sitting down and having a big long chat about it. So that's just, that's kind of the way I treated hurling.
Pretty much done. I wanted to ask you about your career. It's funny, I wouldn't have actually brought up the red card against Colbert, but you mentioned our interview afterwards, which you didn't love, so I didn't want to give the impression I was running away from that conversation. The reason I wouldn't have mentioned it is, for me, when I look at your career, it's not like a defining thing. It's not in the first 5 things I think of when I think of your career. So where is it for you? Obviously, you're right about it. You're not happy with the decision. Get up, you weasel, you say to him. You feel like the conversation between James Owens and the linesman initially is like, geez, there's not much in that at all. The blood seems to sway them. And then we also the shock in your body language when you look down and see the red card.
Yeah.
So all of those feelings still very much endure. Does that feel like a big thing? Is that still an open wound? Are you still angry about that, or is that now?
No, a lot of people do say it to me, like at a kind of a nod and a wink, especially people from Tipperary. No, it's not. When you're writing a book, of course, it was huge at the time, and it was very high profile in the sense that it got a lot of media attention. But no, I brushed it off pretty quickly with a bit of stubbornness, for sure. And when I got that transcript, because they're not my words, they are the audio from the game.
Yeah.
I was just, for the first couple of weeks, I was just so pissed off with Johnny Murphy, because I was looking over and I saw that he saw it, and I was like, what have you just said here? And when I saw that, I was like, oh, do you know what? Even just one little piece of justification was enough for me to just brush it off and be like, actually, do you know what? Who cares about this? But I met 2019. I met Shane Lowry at the 2019 football final, which would have been 3 or 4 weeks afterwards. And I was chatting to him, and he was talking about the sending off. But he said, you know now that's not what people will remember you by. He was like, you know that they'll remember you for all of the brilliant performances you had. And it actually didn't even dawn on me until he said it, that would be a possibility.
Yeah, really, right.
Yeah,
okay.
so like,
so that was an intense few weeks then. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But no, I brushed it off pretty quickly. I was absolutely adamant and determined, not necessarily to make up for it, but to have a better day in Croke Park afterwards. Yes. That was a big piece for me, because I was working in Croke Park. I was in Croke Park this was the Sunday. I was back in the office in Croke Park on Tuesday. And like, I'd walk upstairs to level 6 and I'm looking out and I'm like, so that none of that was, you just couldn't write that side of it. Yeah. But yeah, it was definitely a fairly challenging time mentally.
Yeah, I bet it was. You didn't like our interview?
I didn't like you, Joe. The interview was fine. I don't know. I wasn't in a good mood. All right,
That's
which I think which I think is understandable. But we didn't like the media at all. We didn't like, we didn't trust or like anybody, and I was a little bit, let's say I was a little bit angry going into it. And I was trying to think clearly, and you kept saying, "Oh, Richie." I knew you thought it was a sending off.
Oh, I said it to you. Sorry,
I know you said it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't. What I didn't want to do was do the whole. Well, now, Richie, listen. I think you're a great fella. Some people would say this, and some people would say. Basically, my two options were bring you on and say, "What did you think?" And you said, "Well, I didn't think it was a red card." And I'd say, "Thanks very much. That was great for our 2-minute interview." So I obviously had to push and probe you a little bit.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a more straight up way to do it, to go, well, give us your perspective on it all, let you lay it out. And I said, well, okay, look, I'm someone who possibly does think it's a red. Here's what I saw. Was there an elbow, for instance? But then that prompts you to explain yourself brilliantly. Like, you got a great reaction with that interview. You came across incredibly well, even if you wanted to punch me. And so I'd always say judge the question with the answer as opposed to just the question on its own. It got you to say good things.
Don't worry, you don't have to justify your tactics.
Tactics.
No, at the time,
Yeah.
I didn't care what you thought, right? I wasn't trying to convince you.
And I still don't.
Yeah, so it wasn't. I thought you were trying to convince me, and I was like,
I can see that.
whoa. So
I was possibly trying to play. I should have just played devil's advocate instead of actually going, do you know what? I'll step up here and be the one to tell you. Probably.
You did your job brilliantly. But I didn't care about your job, right? Your job was irrelevant to me.
That's fair.
Yeah. So,
but you came across very well, and good words for James Owens and good words for Tipperary at large. Like, it wasn't like a complete woe is me. You were just like, by the way, I just still don't think there's a red card. Like, it's not a red card, which is absolutely a valid opinion. One of the guys, Ronan, on the team said he thinks as the years have gone on, the percentage of people who think it's a red card has gone down, which is interesting. I don't know why he thinks that. I sort of think that may have happened too. That week, people felt it. I thought a lot of people thought it was a red card.
Yeah.
But I don't know. What would people say to you about it now? Or would it come up often even? Would you get people coming to you in the supermarket going, and by the way, it wasn't a fucking red card, and then going away with their shopping?
Yeah, that's literally exactly how it works. Mainly in supermarkets. I think, look, there hasn't been too many. There's been a lot of tackles like it since, and there hasn't been too many cards flashed.
Fair point.
There is definitely, and this has nothing to do with this, by the way, but there's definitely a sense in the modern game where players are going down easy, trying to buy a free, trying to buy a card. And I was at an event with a couple of players recently, and they cited this as one of the, one thing which could have the worst negative impact on the game is players going down a bit. So players hate this, and I just felt you can go down the soccer route and look at what soccer is now, where we're on TV and a guy is going into the box and someone steps on his toe trying to get to the ball. And it's like, oh yeah, there's contact. So that's a penalty. And, we get into versus. So you're going down a slippery slope. Does that mean that you go the other way and say, oh, look, let's throw a few punches out here and let's say, grand, shake hands and off you go? The game is outrageously difficult to referee. And the more you get into technicalities, the more you're going to tie yourself up in knots. And if you can get a level of common sense approach, which you could never say at administrative level in the GAA, but there should be some sort of a message being filtered down to referees that, look, let the game flow, let it move. And also, the big thing for me was nobody ever questioned that I was trying to make a genuine tackle. That was the difference for me, was, excuse me, I was trying to hit a guy a shoulder and it missed, or he dodged it. It wasn't a sense that I was going to clean a guy out. And for me, the penalty for that was too high.
Okay. Well, I guess it's good that wasn't your only All-Ireland final, or that was your last moment in Croke Park, and maybe you'd even feel a billion times worse about it. I would say, for instance, if Liam McHale is sitting here talking about being sent off against Meath in 96, he won't be feeling magnanimous about that for the rest of his life. How could he? We've done an hour, so I'm going to wrap it up. The one last question is just, and people can read about it in the book, your diligence extends beyond hurling. I thought it was kind of extraordinary that 6 months out from the Leaving Cert, even though you weren't studying history, Brother Damien says, come on, we'll give history a shot, and you get an A1 in history. It's a bit ridiculous, really. And people would know you left teaching. You probably picked it up for the wrong reasons, i.e. your hurling career. Your career satisfaction levels, journey since ditching teaching, do you feel excited by your career now? Are you in a good place? What are you doing on an average day?
Yeah, I work for PwC in consulting, which is a great place to learn. It's such a fantastic business. There's my plug. But this let's say anything that motivates you as an elite athlete, it's not really about the sport. And you figure that out maybe in your mid-20s when you realise that I just wanted to apply myself as good as I can to whatever I'm doing.
Yeah.
And in that sense, I find myself so blessed that I was an amateur player, because I would hate to be, a rugby player who's finishing now and maybe hasn't made lifetime changing amounts of money. Yeah. And even if they have, what do you do with the next 35 years? For me, I was able to develop in leadership skills, teamworking skills, and everything around hard work and, timekeeping, preparation, all of these brilliant, softer skills, and apply them with technical skills by working and get a package by the end of 35 or 36. Whereas, in professional sports, they get all of the softer stuff, but they miss the technical stuff. So I'm so blessed that I'm not starting again. Yeah. I'm picking up, and the 30 odd hours a week that I spent on sport trying to be the best that I can be, I'm more than happy to put those 30 hours or maybe 20 into whatever life throws at you in general, your career, your education, anything that'll just make me a little bit better than I was. And, whether there's a hurling ball involved in it or not is irrelevant to me now.
Okay. It was brave to leave teaching, though. Teeth of a recession. It was a ballsy enough decision. I'm sure lots of people didn't, and they're there 10, 15 years later now and still not in love with it, but just doing it. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
We are done. Thanks so much.
Great.
Best of luck with the book. And will we ever see you in management?
Oh, not very soon.
Okay.
Not very soon.
Okay.
Possibly in the future, but I have too much stuff to do first.
Okay. Well, the book is called Whatever It Takes, Richie Hogan, My Autobiography, with Fintan O'Toole. Richie, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Joe.